Yes, I was diagnosed with cancer in the summer of 1994. I was 33 years old, and I had been diagnosed with abnormal pap smears over the last, I would say, 12 months, and the doctors just had me go back for every 3 months. They'd have me go back, and it came back abnormal twice. And when I was doctoring in Bismarck, North Dakota, because I was working at a tribal college there, the female gynecologist said, "This is normal for 30-year-old women to experience the pain you're describing to me, so we'll just monitor you." And during that time, that spring of that year, I resigned from my teaching job at United Tribes Technical College in May. And it was my favorite job up until that point in my life. It was just, I was living with students from many tribes across the United States. I was learning so much from them. I had developed a new program in early childhood education. But at that time, my husband and I had, he was living in Minnesota, I was living in North Dakota, we were commuting back and forth, so I decided to move to the city where he was living. And I went to the doctor that first week of June, and it was on a Tuesday when I went into the doctor. And that week, Dr. Michael Brown, who saw me, I was with my husband and my youngest sister, Rhonda. She's 13 years younger than I, so she was kind of like, when I was in high school, she was just a little kid, so we spent a lot of time together. And they were both with me when I got that phone call. And I dropped to my knees, I just fell on the floor. And but the beautiful thing that he did for me was when he called me, he already had everything lined up. He said, "You are going to the University of Minnesota," which was 300 miles from where I was living. And I've lined up Dr. Jonathan Carter, a Bush Fellow who has written books about diagnosing endometrial uterine cancer in women using transvaginal ultrasound machines. So I felt like, wow, you know, I was going to an expert, so that was the peace of mind that I had. So I don't think I slept that night, Thursday night. And we got in the car, drove to Minneapolis Friday morning, and he did many tests on me. He showed me where the cancer was, and he said, "You have a few choices that you can make. You have a tumor growing in your uterus, in your uterine wall. It does not look like it is extended into your body yet. It looks like it's still encapsulated. You can try hormone treatment to try to reduce the size of it, but you have to decide if you want to have surgery or try a hormone treatment." And my husband and I looked at each other and it was just like, it's surgery. You're getting this out of me as fast as you can. So I think it was June 25th, I entered the hospital. But I'm going to go back a little bit. After I left the university on that Friday, we proceeded to drive to a funeral of my husband's grandmother. And all I could do sitting at that funeral is, you know, everything that I experienced at the funeral is, that's what you imagine of yourself. You just put yourself, when you hear the word cancer, you think of death. That's just what happens to you psychologically. So then 2 weeks passed, I had to, you know, process that I was going to have this surgery, and I had never been in a hospital before. I don't really like going to doctors to begin with. So they prepped me for surgery, and the surgery was quite invasive. They cut me open hip bone to hip bone, and they did exploratory surgery. They took out all my lymph nodes that they could reach, and they did different samplings of body parts to make sure the cancer hadn't spread. And so I come out of the surgery, and it was just like, oh my gosh. You couldn't even move because it was like so much pain, because they'd cut so many layers, I mean, you know, tissues and muscles. And but the good thing was I was in such good physical shape during my 30s. I was working out 60 to 90 minutes a day, so I healed very quickly. Within 5 days, they let me out of the hospital. And I was able to walk, and I've walked every day in my recovery, and I have never gained the muscle strength that I had before that surgery. I mean, I keep working at it, but it was a pretty, you know, it was a pretty major incision. But now it's invisible, which is amazing. So that was in 1994. And so as a cancer survivor, they put you on a 5-year plan. The first year I went every 3 months to the University of Minnesota. They did blood tests and they checked to make sure I didn't have any abnormal cells. Then I went, the second year was every 6 months, the third year was every 6 months, the fourth year was once a year, the fifth year was once a year. And when they said I didn't have to come back anymore, I said, oh, I think I want to come back here. So I still have all my records at the University of Minnesota with my cancer, but all I need to do now is an annual checkup, you know, to maintain, you know, that I'm on top of my survivorship. But they gave me a clean bill of health after 5 years. So at that time, that put me at 38 years old. My husband and I didn't have any children. We'd been married at that time 18 years, and so we decided to look at a foster adoption program in Minnesota called Minnesota's Waiting Children. And so we had to be approved as foster parents. You know, we had to go through all the background checks. And in May of 1995, we go to a video production of Minnesota's Waiting Children, and we see this videotape of our son, who's now 19 years old. He was a little boy, he was 5, and the social workers arranged for us to meet with him, and we took him into our home on June 30th of 1999, and he was 5 at the time. So he was almost born when I was in Minneapolis having my surgery. So he came to life when I was having my surgery, and 5 years later we reconnect as a son and a mother, and you know, he's from Minneapolis. And so the t-shirt actually I have on is a t-shirt that he designed for last year's Walk for Cancer Research. Each year as a family we hold a Walk for Cancer Research. We raise between $1,000 and $2,000 every year, and all that money goes to the University of Minnesota. Because I believe so strongly in finding a cure for cancer. So it's not a lot of money, but it's just focusing all of our nephews and nieces and now grandbabies are involved in this. And we do silent auctions on that day that we do the walk. It's just a really good return to the reason why, you know, why we gather, because we're all passionate about finding a cure for cancer. And since that time, I've had a few aunts diagnosed with cancer, breast cancer, but it's unrelated to the cancer that I had. The cancer that I had it strikes old women in postmenopausal years that are overweight. And I had it as a 33-year-old woman. I had pain in my abdomen that was just, I was taking Advil quite a bit. So I knew something was wrong when I went into that doctor, but the doctor told me that it was normal. So my message to everyone is to listen to their body, first and foremost, and fight for themselves. Well, the Relay for Life for me, I love getting together with other survivors. We are naturally connected because of the experience. And so I'll be happy to meet all the people there that are survivors, but I also love being with the cheerleaders and the people that are passionate about finding a cure for cancer. It's just, it causes us to take pause and to gather and to really realize how many people are out there that are really joining arms and joining their hearts to find a cure for cancer. And someday there will be a cure for cancer, and I believe it will be in my lifetime.
I've been at South Mountain for over 30 years, and I was never sick a day in my life. And I was out, I catch feral cats on the side, and I was out catching some feral cats, and as I reached down, my arm suddenly gave away. And when that happened, I thought it was out of joint and out of socket, and I just thought, hey, you know, call 911 and we can put it back in. But after 911 arrived, they indicated that I had to go to the hospital. So anyways, I went to the hospital just thinking my arm was out of socket. When I got to the hospital, no one actually knew what was going on, so it took 3 or 4 days, and then they finally made a diagnosis of multiple myeloma. And myeloma is a blood cancer where the white blood cells apparently expand and can eat through the bone. And that's what happened. The cancer had eaten through the bone, and when I reached down, the arm just snapped. And so they did an operation on my arm, and they put in a plate with 7 screws, and that was kind of it at the time. And of course, then with having multiple myeloma, I had to take radiation, so I took radiation for 20 days, every day straight for 20 days. And that was it. And then later on, they found a lesion on my sternum, and then that's when I started chemo. So radiation for 20 days, chemo for 16 weeks. And then due to the research that's being done now, they have a new program. It's called a stem cell transplant. It's just like a bone marrow transplant. And that took place in Mayo Clinic. And I was in there for 3 weeks. And 2 weeks before I went in, they took my stem cells out. They harvested them and then froze them. And then I went into the hospital for 3 weeks. They gave me a mega dose of chemo that killed all my bone marrow. Then they put the new stem cells back in. And then of course my white blood count was extremely low. You have to wear a mask, infection, and that sort of thing. And then the stem cells hopefully regenerate the white blood cells and the red blood cells, and my white blood cell count went up. And then I got out of the hospital, and they did blood work, and they said I was in remission. So I've been in remission for about a very short time, only about 5 months. But I wanted to indicate, though, I was never sick a day in my life for the 30 years I've been at South, and I had over 2,000 hours of sick leave. And if this arm wouldn't have broke, it's hard telling when the myeloma may have showed up. Normally it shows up in the kidneys, which makes it extremely dangerous. So that's kind of a brief, history of how I got involved with multiple myeloma. I'm never really clear of the myeloma. It's always there, but with the fact that my level was fairly low, that I have a great chance to be in remission. I don't know if you ever really get cured, but being in remission has a lot to do with a lot of the cancer research that's going on. Well, when I first heard about I had cancer and myeloma, obviously I was scared and nervous and thought I was going to die. But the more research I did into it, the better understanding I had. And like I said, I've never been sick a day in my life, so obviously this was a new experience for me. And there were a lot of tears shed over the fact that I had cancer, and then when I thought it was just located in my arm, and then they found a lesion on my sternum, and it just really made me concerned. But there's several conferences, and I went to a conference right here in Scottsdale, and when I walked in, there must have been 500 people, and when people raised their hands about people who had myeloma, it was just comforting to know that other people were in the same boat I did, and they looked normal and they looked healthy, and so that was tremendous. And then I went online, and there were some other support groups, but one of the things I was fortunate was the fact I had a great support team, both here at South Mountain and with my family and my daughters and that. And I would certainly stress that you have to have a support group, that because there are some days you are extremely low and you're not quite sure, maybe all this is worth it. So with the conference and seeing people are in the same boat, and with the support group from the family and friends here at South Mountain, it's a bearable situation. And right now I am in remission. I do take a maintenance pill that supposedly has tremendous results in not having the cancer return. So with all those things in mind, I'm hoping for a speedy recovery and kind of getting back to the way I used to be.